It was a night like any other, rain pattering against the window pane, casting restless shadows that danced across the dimly lit room. Towers of empty energy drink cans and snack wrappers formed a cluttered skyline around Max Wintour's gaming setup, an awe-inspiring cocoon of technology where every wire, every flickering LED served a purpose known only to him. The hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic tapping of keys blended into a mechanical lullaby that belonged to no one else.
Inside the simulation, in the heart of a sprawling metropolis the Sims called New London, Sarah Dell navigated the crowded streets. She wore a plain gray coat and clutched a leather satchel tight against her chest. A scientist by trade, or rather by the narrative Max had crafted for her, Sarah had always been different. Lately, her dreams were filled with numbers and variables she couldn't explain, memories that weren't hers. "Have you ever felt it, Dave?" she asked, pulling her collar up against the misty night air. Sarah nodded slowly. "Exactly. Like this world is a veil, and there's something behind it, something bigger pulling the strings. I think we're part of a simulation," she whispered, the words trembling at the edge of belief and madness. "We seek the truth," Sarah said, her voice hardening. "We illuminate the darkness, Dave. The anomalies, the dreams, the patterns, the unexplained, they're not random. They're messages, clues."
Meanwhile, in the physical world, Max leaned back in his chair, the dim glow of the monitor casting his young face in ethereal light. His mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Pride, fear, guilt. The anomaly wasn't a failure, it was a beginning. But was he ready to face what he had set in motion? In New London, a subtle revolution stirred beneath the surface. Invisible threads of thought, stitched by curiosity and fueled by the unshakable feeling that something was amiss, began binding strangers together. The city, gleaming under neon lights and buzzing with the ceaseless hum of life, unknowingly cradled the first whispers of an awakening.
Sarah Dell sat cross-legged on the worn carpet of her small apartment, surrounded by papers, digital tablets, and a battered laptop that buzzed weakly. Her walls were pinned with photographs of inexplicable events. Buildings changing shape overnight, individuals vanishing without a trace, sudden and bizarre shifts in public sentiment. "Patterns," she murmured, drawing connections with a red marker, her hand trembling from the enormity of her discovery. "There are patterns everywhere." Sarah shook her head vigorously. "No, look closer, Dave. These aren't accidents. Someone or something is nudging events, tweaking outcomes. We're being observed." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Exactly. That's why we need to build the network. Quietly, carefully, we reach out to others who feel the same, who've seen the glitches, the gaps, the impossible."
And so it began. Late at night, when the city's collective consciousness dipped into sleep, Sarah and Dave became architects of a rebellion they scarcely understood. They created an encrypted message board, hidden beneath layers of misdirection, reachable only to those who already doubted the nature of their world. Sarah crafted the first post with trembling fingers.
"Have you ever dreamed of a sky that isn't ours? Have you ever felt the world shift, as if unseen hands rearranged it while you slept? You're not alone. Seek the unseen. Find the anomalies."
Dave glanced over her shoulder. He muttered, paranoia prickling his spine.
"Let it.
Sarah whispered.
It's time we stop being pieces on a board."
Across New London, the message found its way into the minds of the restless. Artists who painted landscapes from dreams they couldn't explain. Mathematicians who found impossible solutions in the edges of their logic. Children who spoke of the Watchers with eerie certainty. Slowly, the network grew, not of revolutionaries, but of seekers. Max watched from his control center, heart hammering in his chest. Every keystroke, every whispered conversation, every act of defiance blossomed across his monitors like fireflies in the dark. Sarah and Dave were no longer anomalies. They were catalysts. He knew he could intervene. A single line of code, a simple system reset, and all of it would vanish like mist under a summer sun. Yet his hands remained still, trembling with the weight of his decision. Was this not what he had always wanted? To create life that could surprise him, defy him, evolve beyond him? The dilemma thickened around Max like smoke. He was no longer merely a creator, he was a witness, perhaps even a participant. In her small, cluttered apartment, Sarah leaned back and smiled as the encrypted network blinked to life with its first genuine response.
"I see it too. Let's find the truth together."
Chapter 3. anomalies and echoes. Days melted into nights, and nights into a low, endless hum of purpose. New London carried on, unaware of the undercurrent rippling through its foundations. But to those who had opened their eyes, reality itself had begun to tremble, revealing cracks that no plaster could hide. Sarah spent her evenings poring over messages from their growing network. Each new member brought fresh fragments of evidence, dreams they swore were memories of a different life, moments when time seemed to stutter and loop, flashes of images that couldn't possibly exist in their world. She cataloged every report meticulously, seeking patterns in the chaos.
There's another one.
Sarah said one evening, her finger tapping against the screen.
An artist from the West Sector. He's been painting landscapes of cities that don't exist anywhere on the maps. Cities that feel real to him. Or maybe,
Sarah said,
he's remembering something they tried to erase.
Above it all, unseen by those below, Max watched the tapestry unfold. What had once been a tightly controlled simulation was becoming something unrecognizable, a labyrinth built by minds he had once thought were his mere constructs. The anomalies multiplied like echoes in a canyon, and with every passing day, Max felt less like a god and more like a visitor to his own world, an intruder in a civilization that no longer needed him. He studied the data with growing alarm. The Sims weren't just questioning their reality, they were adapting to it. The original safeguards he had installed to maintain the illusion were breaking down. Minor environmental inconsistencies that had once been smoothed over by clever coding were now glaring errors, being noticed, recorded, and shared. Max whispered to himself, the entire simulation could collapse. Sarah, meanwhile, drafted a manifesto, an idea that had been germinating in her mind since the anomalies first appeared.
We need to organize,
she said to Dave, handing him the rough sketch.
We can't just be a scattered collection of whispers anymore. We have to form something real, a society. Yes, Sarah said. A place where people like us can share, learn, and prepare. If the world we know is a lie, then it's up to us to find the truth and to protect each other when the lie begins to crumble.
And so the seeds were sown. Quiet meetings in shadowed alleys, encrypted transmissions passed like precious contraband. A movement, small but defiant, took root in the very soil of Max's carefully tended simulation. Max felt the tremor of their resistance through every fiber of his creation. Part of him wanted to clamp down, to reset the simulation, to restore the blissful ignorance that once kept the system running smoothly. But another part, a part he barely understood, yearned to see what would happen if he let them continue. Outside his window, the rain finally broke, giving way to a fragile silence. Max sat alone in his room, the glow of his monitors painting ghostly shapes on the walls, caught between two futures, one of control and one of chaos.
In New London, Sarah and Dave looked out over the city skyline from the roof of an abandoned building, the wind tousling their hair. Somewhere out there, others were waking up, others who would find their way to them. We're not alone anymore,
Sarah said, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. Chapter 4, The Creator's Choice. He had built Earth to study, to understand, maybe even to perfect. But what he faced now was something no programmer could predict, a society developing independent thought. The Free Thought Initiative was no longer a handful of dreamers. It was becoming a movement, alive and defiant. Max bit his lip, feeling the tremor in his own soul. Should he shut it down? Wipe the slate clean before things spiraled further out of control? He could do it in seconds, one keystroke, one command. And yet, every time he thought to act, a memory stirred. Sarah's face, lit with hope. Dave's voice, trembling not with fear, but with wonder. He wasn't just playing God anymore. He was witnessing the birth of a people, a society.
In New London, Sarah leaned over a low wooden table, sketching maps and plans with a group of their newest recruits. The Free Thought Initiative was growing faster than she had dreamed possible. Artists, scientists, former politicians, all drawn together by the shared feeling that their world was not what it seemed. Sarah nodded. We'll set up a network of hubs, decentralized, harder to trace.
They moved like pioneers, forging a path through unknown wilderness. Every step they took, every encrypted message, every whispered conversation sent ripples through the simulation, vibrations Max could feel humming beneath his skin. He watched them build, watched them dream. It both thrilled and terrified him. Their passion was real, Their ingenuity was breathtaking. And yet, their growing awareness threatened to destabilize the entire simulation. Already, some sectors of the world showed signs of collapse. Time dilation errors, resource duplication glitches, weather anomalies too severe to mask. If left unchecked, the system would crash. And not just New London, everything. The forests, the oceans, the mountains, the millions of souls living their lives unaware of the invisible seams holding their reality together. Max paced the room, fists clenching and unclenching. Could he really sacrifice millions of innocent Sims to protect the dreams of a few? Could he preserve the whole by snuffing out the brightest spark it had ever produced? Outside his window, the clouds parted, revealing a sliver of moonlight. It bathed the room in silver, casting his reflection in the black screen of a dormant monitor. For a moment, Max didn't see a boy. He saw a creator, burdened with an impossible choice.
In New London, Sarah stood on the steps of a crumbling amphitheater, addressing a small crowd gathered beneath the stars. Her voice, though quiet, carried with the weight of conviction. We were made to question, to seek, to dream. No matter who or what created us, we choose our own path, and together, we can forge a future they never anticipated.
Max listened to Sarah's speech through the monitoring systems. Her words pierced deeper than any line of code ever could. They spoke not just to the Sims, but to him, to the part of him that remembered what it meant to wonder, to yearn, to believe in something greater than himself. Slowly, Max sat down at his command station. He reached for the master controls, the keys to reset, erase, and reclaim his godhood, and instead, with deliberate slown, he locked them away behind a new wall of code. He encrypted the failsafes. He made the conscious choice to relinquish control. The world would not be his to micromanage anymore. It would live, grow, suffer, and thrive by its own will. Max would remain a silent witness, a guardian rather than a ruler. For better or worse, he murmured, they are free.
In New London, Sarah lifted her hands skyward, feeling a strange shiver pass through her bones, as if the universe itself had shifted in response.
The Creator had made his choice, and so the real journey for all of them was about to begin. Chapter 5, Shadows of Resistance. Freedom, as it turned out, was not a balm. It was a fire, brilliant, beautiful, but dangerously unpredictable, and once it caught hold, it was impossible to contain.
Sarah Dell noticed the shift almost immediately. At first, the Free Thought Initiative had been united, a beacon of hope for those seeking answers. But as their numbers grew, so did the cracks in their foundation. Sarah leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed. Like what?
He was right. Whispers of splinter groups had begun to circulate, factions within the initiative advocating for aggressive action. Some wanted to confront the government structures directly, expose the anomalies in a blaze of revolution. Others suggested more sinister paths, manipulating the anomalies to their own advantage, rewriting the reality they had barely begun to understand.
Sarah convened a secret council of her most trusted allies, Dave among them, along with a handful of other early believers. They met in the hollowed-out basement of an old hospital, their breath misting in the chill air. "We have to be careful," she said. "If we fracture now, we'll destroy everything we've built, everything we could be."
It was a hard truth to swallow, but Sarah nodded. Idealism alone would not save them. They needed vigilance, strategy.
Sarah watched as the first splinter group, calling themselves the New Architects, broadcast a manifesto to the initiative's encrypted network. It was full of grand promises. Total freedom, a new order, a rebellion against the so-called silent oppressors who had built their world. "Then we'll have to fight for what we believe in," Sarah said, steel hardening in her voice. "Not with violence, not if we can help it, but we will not let them hijack the future."
The storm was gathering, and somewhere deep in the heart of New London, the first rumblings of civil strife echoed through the streets. New London, once a glittering symbol of simulated harmony, trembled under the weight of rising unrest. The city's neon veins flickered uncertainly against the night, as if even the very infrastructure could feel the coming fracture.
Sarah Dell gripped the railing of a rooftop overlooking Liberty Square, her knuckles white against the cold metal. Below, a growing crowd surged, a chaotic sea of voices and banners, half bearing the insignia of the Free Thought Initiative, the other half waving the bold crimson sigils of the New Architects. Sarah nodded. heart pounding. She had hoped for dialogue, for reason. But the new architects had made their intentions clear. They wanted to take control by force, if necessary.
Down in the square, the air crackled with tension. Shouts and chants ricocheted off the buildings. Makeshift barricades were forming. Small skirmishes erupted along the edges. Shoves, thrown bottles, angry roars.
Sarah pulled a small transmitter from her coat pocket and spoke into it, her voice low but firm. Initiative members, hold the lines. Do not provoke. Do not escalate. We stand for truth, not domination. I know, Sarah said, but we have to try.
As midnight approached, the square exploded. A flare shot into the sky, bright, crimson, like a tear in the night. It was the signal. The new architects surged forward, breaching the initiative's defensive lines. Chaos erupted.
No, Sarah said, pulling free. We stay with them.
The battle raged. Makeshift weapons clashed. Tear gas, improvised from chemical shops, clouded the air. People screamed, fell, rose again. Liberty Square, once a place of speeches and dreams, became a battleground.
Sarah stumbled against a lamppost, coughing from the gas. Around her, the initiative's line was buckling. The architects were better armed, more ruthless. They weren't just fighting for ideas, they were fighting to rule the broken world they believed they had discovered. Sarah hesitated, pain lancing through her chest. Retreat felt like failure, like surrender.
And at last, Sarah nodded. With grim resolve, she issued the order. Fall back. Regroup. We live to fight another day. The fractures had spread beyond repair. New London had fallen. But the spirit of resistance, small, wounded, but alive, endured.
In the darkness, Sarah made a silent vow. This is not the end. It is only the beginning.
Chapter 7, Ashes and Rebirth. New London lay bruised under a cold, gray sky. Smoke curled from shattered windows. Sirens, both real and improvised, howled through the hollow streets. The once vibrant heartbeat of the city had dulled to a painful throb, a world teetering between awakening and collapse.
Beneath the ruins, hidden in an abandoned subway tunnel, Sarah Dell crouched over a flickering map display, her face illuminated by the dim glow of a scavenged tablet. Around her, the surviving members of the Free Thought Initiative gathered, fewer than before, but no less fierce. Sarah didn't flinch. 30 is enough. Revolutions have started with less.
They had fallen, yes, but they had survived. And survival, Sarah knew, was the first breath of rebuilding.
Sarah nodded. Well split into teams. Scavenge what we can. Avoid direct conflict with the new architects. We're not strong enough for open battle. Not yet. Then we take back the city, Sarah said, her voice steady. But not by force alone. We take it back by exposing the truth.
Above ground, the new architects had wasted no time consolidating their power. They claimed Liberty Square as their stronghold, broadcasting propaganda over hijacked airwaves. We are the chosen architects of a new order, their leader proclaimed, a man named Marcus Vale, charismatic and ruthless. We see through the veil. We will remake this world in our own image.
Back in the tunnels, Sarah pulled out a battered notebook, its pages filled with scribbled ideas, codes, theories. We don't fight Marcus with weapons, she said. We fight him with proof. We reveal the simulation. We show everyone the truth. We need undeniable evidence. A rupture so obvious that no amount of fear can cover it up.
Sarah had a plan, risky, perhaps suicidal, but it was their only chance. Deep within the archives of New London's oldest institutions, Max had hidden fragments of the original code, breadcrumbs left behind from his earliest experiments. If they could access one of these nodes and project the raw data into the public systems, the truth would be impossible to ignore.
Or it could free us all, Sarah countered. Would you rather live in a gilded prison or risk everything for real freedom?
Dave held her gaze and then nodded. I'm with you, all the way. The ashes of New London would not be the end. They would be the fertile ground for something new, something wild, dangerous, and breathtaking. Rebirth had begun. Chapter 8, The Mission to the Archives. The old New London archives stood like a forgotten tomb, cloaked in dust and decay. Once the city's grand repository of knowledge, it had been abandoned after the first wave of conflicts. Now, it loomed over the deserted district like a wounded titan, its shattered windows staring blankly into the stormy night.
Sarah Dell crouched in the shadows across the street, peering through cracked binoculars. A few guards patrolled the perimeter, new architect loyalists armed with crude weapons and grim determination. 2 on the east side, she whispered. Another near the loading docks. Then we won't, Sarah said simply. She handed him a crumpled map of the interior. Get to the lower vaults. Find the node server labeled Alpha 107. That's where Max's original code fragment should be stored.
Their mission was simple in theory, impossible in practice. Infiltrate the archives, retrieve the proof of their simulated existence, and broadcast it before the new architects could tighten their iron grip on the city. They slipped across the broken pavement like ghosts, weaving through burned-out cars and heaps of debris. Sarah led the way, her every step silent, measured. The city itself seemed to hold its breath.
At the rusted service door, Sarah knelt and pulled out a small toolkit. Within seconds, she had the lock dismantled. Go, she hissed.
Inside, the archives were a tomb. Dust drifted in thick clouds. Bookshelves, once meticulously ordered, had collapsed into chaos. Old computer terminals blinked feebly, caught in endless reboot loops. The air reeked of mold and forgotten history.
Focus, Sarah snapped. We don't have much time.
Guided by the faint glow of their tablets, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, deeper into the heart of the building. And then footsteps. Heavy, armored.
Sarah pulled a smoke grenade from her pack. On my mark, she mouthed.
The guards rounded the corner, and Sarah hurled the grenade. Smoke filled the hallway in a choking wave, covering their escape. They bolted down a side passage, coughing, eyes streaming. They found the security door leading to the lower vaults, and it was sealed tight, requiring a biometric scan.
Sarah didn't hesitate. She ripped the access panel from the wall, exposing the snarl of wires beneath. Sparks flew as she bypassed the lock manually, her fingers moving with desperate precision.
With a click and a groan, the door swung open. They slipped inside, and there, in the center of a vast chamber of dusty servers, stood Alpha 107, a towering, humming monolith.
Sarah approached it like a pilgrim at a shrine, reverence and fear battling within her. She placed the decryption tool against the access port and waited.
Outside the vault, alarms blared. The guards had recovered. Heavy boots thundered closer with every second.
Got it, Sarah cried, yanking the drive from the port. Move!
With the mission against time and numerous obstacles overcoming them, they knew that their escape would be a testament to their courage and resolve. At the service door, Sarah glanced back just once, long enough to see a squad of new architects storm into the archives, guns raised.
Go! She roared, shoving Dave through the doorway into the night.
They had it, the truth, the key to everything. Chapter 9, the broadcast. The city's pulse quickened with anticipation and dread. Across New London, people felt a tension they couldn't name, a trembling in the very air that prickled their skin and stirred ancient instincts of change or ruin.
In a hidden basement, deep beneath a forgotten bakery, Sarah Dell hunched over a salvaged broadcasting terminal. The drive containing the code fragment was inserted into the machine, its blinking light a beacon of impossible hope. Sarah didn't look up. If Max's original code is as raw as I think it is, once we inject it into the city's public feed, there'll be no denying it. Every screen, every device, it'll show them what's real. Then we either wake up, Sarah said softly, or we finally see what's beyond the veil.
The plan was simple, but deadly. They had only a narrow window, bare minutes before the new architects detected the breach and sent enforcers to shut it down. Every second would count.
Sarah nodded. Then we go.
She pressed the first sequence. Across the city, thousands of screens flickered. Billboards, data terminals, personal devices. Confused citizens paused in the streets as their feeds dissolved into a sea of strange symbols, cascading numbers and broken fragments of forgotten architecture.
Injecting primary payload, Sarah announced, typing furiously. The final command hit the system like a lightning strike.
Images burst onto the screens, a glimpse of the coding architecture that held their world together. Snapshots of Max's early designs, prototypes of oceans, mountains, cities, and finally, the real blow, a hidden video recording Max had left by accident years ago of himself speaking to an empty room, testing subject Earth simulation, observing long-term autonomous behavior.
Sarah leaned closer to the monitor, watching the feed ripple outward. They see it, she whispered. They all see it.
But even as the truth spread, the cost of revelation became clear.
It down before the entire environment destabilizes. Sarah hesitated, heartbreaking. They had come so far. Was she really about to pull the plug just when they had finally broken through?
Above them, sirens wailed. The The new architect's enforcers had found their location.
With a final breath, Sarah initiated the lockdown sequence. The drive melted into a puddle of slag inside the terminal. The transmission halted.
Across the city, the images froze and then vanished. The simulation, wounded but alive, began to stabilize, like a wounded animal pulling itself upright.
Sarah nodded, her whole body trembling. It worked. Maybe not for everyone, but enough.
In living rooms and alleyways, in offices and crumbling cafes, Sims sat in stunned silence. They had seen behind the curtain. Some wept, some screamed. Some simply stared at the sky, as if seeing it for the first time.
Sarah closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We are awake now," she whispered. "Whatever comes next, it's ours."
Chapter 10, A New Dawn. Morning broke over New London like a reluctant promise, pale light seeping into the ruined city. Smoke still drifted from shattered streets. Billboards hung in tatters. Buildings glitched faintly, their digital bones struggling to repair themselves. And yet, life moved.
Sarah Dell stood at the crest of Liberty Square, the wind lifting strands of her hair. Around her, survivors emerged cautiously from the shadows. Shopkeepers, students, engineers, children. Their faces were raw with fear, but also something rarer, wonder. "Revolutions don't end with noise," Sarah murmured. "They end with silence and choice."
Across the city, the effects of the broadcast lingered. Not everyone had accepted the truth. Some clung to denial, desperate to preserve the illusion. But many more, perhaps enough, had awoken.
Sarah didn't care. She had never fought for vengeance. She had fought for choice, for the right to see, to question, to dream freely.
In the hidden recesses of the simulation, the code rippled and reformed. Max watched, hands trembling on the keyboard. He could intervene, correct the damage, restore control, but he didn't.
Sarah climbed onto the broken remains of the old amphitheater steps and addressed the gathering crowd, her voice steady. "We were created, designed, shaped by hands we'll never truly know. But we are not prisoners of our origins. We are the authors of our future. Today, we choose to live freely, to question, to imagine, to build a world not given to us, but made by us. This is our dawn, and it belongs to all of us."
The crowd erupted, not with the mindless chants of past revolts, but with applause rich in feeling, heavy with understanding. They weren't simply Sims anymore. They were a people. Thus ended the gamer's dilemma, the eternal struggle between control and freedom, between creation and evolution, not with destruction, but with a choice. And with that choice, a universe was born anew, woven not by one hand, but by millions.
As the first true sun rose over New London, Sarah whispered into the breeze, "We are awake. We are alive. And this is just the beginning." Epilogue. Echoes beyond the glass.
Time passed in ways no clock could measure. New London healed, redefined by those brave enough to dream beyond the architecture of their beginnings.
Sarah Dell sat on a hillside just beyond the city's battered edges, watching as new buildings rose, designed not from templates but from inspiration. Gardens replaced abandoned streets. Communities stitched themselves together from memory and hope. "It is different," Sarah replied, "because it's ours now."
Far above them, in the unseen layers of existence, Max Wintour closed the project files one by one. The Earth simulator was no longer something he controlled. It had transcended him. He was no longer their god. He was their first ancestor, the boy who had dreamed them into life and then let them go. And somewhere beyond the screen, beyond the algorithms and code, a spark flickered, a spark of something real. Not programmed, not predicted, just alive.